Good morning, everyone. Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share a contemplative focus with you. And the focus that I want to share with you is don't take it personally. Third eye focus. Remember that when whatever anyone says or does, even when it seems that it is about you or directed at you, they only speak about themselves. It's a reminder that when others project negativity, it often has little to do with us and everything to do with their own inner reality. Listen with this perception and notice and note the times when you take things personally yourself and what was triggered within your experience. In this way, their unconscious projection that they're sharing with you can become a tool for you to become more aware and more conscious of yourself and what kind of inner reality you're creating and what triggers it, what's behind all of that. So, third eye focus. Don't take it personally, third eye focus. Why third eye focus and what does that mean? The third eye, right here, is where this is known as the third eye because it's an eye that sees beyond the physical reality. It's where we break free from the constrictions of the physical reality that we have become so identified with, and we begin to perceive our own subtle dimensions of our multidimensional selves, beyond the physical reality, beyond the constrictions of physicality, and into who we truly are, which is consciousness, of course, because there is nothing else. So whatever anybody does or says, no matter how negative it might be in appearance, it's really just commentary on what they're going through, what their creation is. We're creating our own movies, as I'm creating one as I speak. But is it a conscious creation? Is it a positive creation? And do I own my creation? This is the real question here, because if everybody did own their own creation, there would be no violence, because they would realize the violence that's happening as a result of their projections is only because they projected a trigger for some people to engage in violence. And that's always what's happening in the world today, as crazy as it is. Anything you say in public could be a trigger for somebody else and unconsciously invoke a reaction from somebody else that could be very negative physically. And this seems to be a very common happening here in the world today, because everybody's caught up in the extremes of ego identification. When we come into this world, when we're born into this world, we are filled with data from our interactions, beginning with our parents, beginning with the people closest to us in our lives, and it keeps going on throughout our life. And if we take on an identity as a result, then we must, to be free of that identification, we have to realize where it came from. We have to see what the trigger is, and then we can diffuse it by using a positive focus in relation to the trigger until we dissolve its power. We come to realize that it's not true. And as we go through this process of clearing out our identifications and removing the triggers where we unconsciously react to something that someone says or does, then we become more and more free from it and more able to move on to more subtle aspects of ourselves. We're freeing ourselves. And in that process, we realize just how much we are creating an inner reality that's all based on illusion. Everything in this world that appears to us is part of the illusion that is happening in the creation game. where the negative polarity is by default dominant. And by that I mean we're not aware of our source. We're not aware of our truth. Our ultimate truth is that everything is consciousness. This whole creation game is coming out of consciousness for the purposes that consciousness has in it, which is to fully be itself. And to fully be itself, it has to experience itself. But to experience itself, it has to contract itself into create a polarized field of experience. And in that polarity, which is part of the basis of the mechanics of illusion, it contracts itself until it becomes identified with itself as a human being in our case, and then from there the illusion just gains more and more power. In the beginning of our experience in this game, the creation game, we're thoroughly identified with ourselves as being a flesh and blood human being, and that's it. And we experience this for a long time until we're tired of it, until we've had enough of it, and then we begin to build momentum to the other polarity, the positive polarity, and that's when we start to meditate and teachers show up in our world and so forth. But this is a process that's automatic. The mechanics and the way that the relative field of reality works is that whenever it reaches an extreme in either polarity, it starts to shift back towards the other one. So it's going back. In other words, once you've built up enough momentum in your identification with a negative polarity, with your own illusions, then you start to open up to its opposite, which is the positive polarity. And that's what's happening in the world today. We can see that very clearly. It's going crazy today, more and more so. And in that, as a collective, this planet is going through an extreme in the human experience. And it will continue to do so until it reaches a point of extreme illusion where a shift can happen, and then things will start moving towards the positive polarity. It could be something very dramatic, or it might be something slow. We don't know what it's going to look like, but that's just the mechanics of the way reality really works. Because consciousness is orchestrating the show. We don't have much power over our lives or what we do or what we experience until we own our own creation. Once we own our creation, once we understand the mechanics of our creation of illusion, then we can start working with it, as I've just described here. We can start looking into what's the basis of our creation. Why am I creating this event one way, that event another way, and so forth and so on. So we understand that we are directing a film that we are creating, and we are the star of the show. And it can be good or it can be bad, but either way, it's an illusion. And once we break away from creating illusions unconsciously, we become very, very close to realizing other dimensions of our multi-dimensional selves. We are creations of consciousness because we are consciousness. Ultimately, that's our truth. That's the truth of everything in existence. So no matter what we think, no matter what we create in our minds, and the mind is a master of illusion, that's what it is. It's an illusion. This is good, that's bad, so forth and so on. But no, the real ultimate truth is we are all consciousness. We are all the same. And we are all equal in our experience as human beings, going through this experience and growing our awareness through our experience as we become more and more tired of being victims of our own creations, you might say, So at some point or another, usually after many lifetimes of experiencing this unconscious creativity that's going on within our human experience, we begin to wake up to the fact that, this is not what we really want. Our truth will ultimately win out, because it has to, because that's the only reality that is not illusory. So we can play the game as often and as long as we wish, but ultimately our truth will win out, because it's the ultimate creator of everything that's happening that we are aware of, and much that we are not aware of. So in our experience as human beings, when we start to focus inward, when we turn inward, we're going towards the positive polarity. When we keep our focus to the external world, when that's the only reality that we ever pay any attention to, then the negative polarity is dominant, and it will remain dominant until we start to direct our attention into ourselves. And that's what these contemplations are all about. They're about going in relation to what we're experiencing from the external objective polarity. So this is the kind of routine that we did with our teacher, Master Charles Cannon, because he understood these mechanics really well. He had mastered them, which is why he called himself Master Charles. And for us to become masters of ourselves, this is one of the processes that we would go through. We would take a contemplation, and then we would work with it for a month, and then we would report back what our experience was. And in all cases, our experience was very cathartic, but cathartic in a positive way, that we would bring up the upheaval that comes when you discover that you're creating something that's not real, and remnants, especially emotional remnants that were attached to that creation, would come up for you. If you could release that, if you could release it with the awareness that it was a illusion of your own doing, then you could disempower that illusion, and in so doing be free from it. As I know, when I first came here many years ago, I was being hit with my own illusions many, many times every day, and they were negative illusions. I did not realize just how negative I was until I got into a context where the positive polarity was dominant via the presence of our teacher, who had mastered the creation game himself. So it's a great opportunity for anyone, and it comes into people's lives when they're ready for it to happen. When the intensity of waking up, when the intensity of growing your awareness of who you truly are reaches a point where that is an experience that you're ready for, when you're ready to go through that, when you're ready to own what you're creating, that no matter what's happening in your life, it's because you chose to create it unconsciously. And so when you listen to your own self as you're responding to someone who is speaking or to you, even if it's positive or negative, and you keep that focus going, then you realize you're consciously creating whatever you're creating, and that's the first step to being free from it, if it requires you to be free from it. It might be a very uplifting and positive experience, and there's no reason why you shouldn't have that, as long as you remain aware that that too is your creation. That's a reality that you chose to create, and if you create your reality consciously, then you are breaking free from being entrapped in negative creations, and you will grow your awareness, and you'll grow your positive polarity within yourself, and in that you are freeing yourself from the imprisonment and restrictions that you once created unconsciously. So that's the sharing I wanted to bring to you today in this live stream, and I hope it has helped you or reminded you of the power that you truly have within yourself to be as free as you choose to be, simply by realizing that you are the director of your reality. You are the producer, the director, and the owner of the movie that you are creating. So that's it for today. I thank you for being here, and I will be back again next week with another live stream. And hopefully none of us will take it personally. Thank you so much.